In 1871, a German explorer named Karl Moak reached a set of stone ruins in southern Africa. Soaring granite walls, a great curved enclosure, a tower of dressed stone, all raised without a single drop of mortar. He cut a splinter of wood from one of the old doorways, decided it was Lebanese cedar, and from that one guess, declared the Africans could not possibly have built this. It had to be the Queen of Sheba. He was wrong about all of it, but the lie he told that day would be looted into museums, printed into guidebooks, and defended by a government for the better part of a century. This is Great Zimbabwe, the largest ancient stone city in sub-Saharan Africa, standing in the country that took its name, Zimbabwe, named from the Shona, for houses of stone. And let's settle the thing every other telling treats as a riddle. There is no mystery about who built Great Zimbabwe. We know. It was the Shona, the ancestors of the people still living in that land today. The mystery was manufactured on purpose. This isn't the story of a lost city. It's the story of the people who tried to make you lose it. Around the year 1100, a new city began to rise on a high, granite-strewn plateau. And when an earlier Shona capital called Mapungubwe declined far to the south, around the year 1300, the center of power shifted here completely. It was built by hands from a world already centuries rich in stone, cattle, and gold. And Great Zimbabwe grew into something staggering. At its peak, in the 1300s and 1400s, as many as 18,000 people lived here, at the center of a trade network that reached the far side of the world. Gold, ivory, and copper moved out through the Swahili coast and into the Indian Ocean. By some estimates, as much as a third of the medieval world's gold passed through this trade. Archaeologists later found glass beads from Asia in the ruins, and a single coin minted in Kiel, 1,500 miles away. This was a hub of the medieval world. If forgotten cities and the truths people tried to bury are your kind of story, take a second to subscribe, because what happened to this city's history is stranger and uglier than the ruins let on. Now stand at the walls, because this is the part the lie was built to deny. The great enclosure runs some 250 meters around, its outer wall rising as high as 11 meters, and not one stone is held by mortar. None. The granite was quarried straight from the outcrops around the city, split by a technique they had mastered. Heat the rock face with fire, then throw on cold water, and the stone cracks off in flat, even sheets. Dress them, stack them, and you have walls that have stood dry and unmortared for more than 500 years. Inside the enclosure stands its most famous feature, a solid conical tower of stone, around 10 meters tall, built like a granary, often read as a symbol of a ruler's authority, though its exact purpose remains uncertain. But the walls prove the skill beyond doubt. Deliberate curves where the stone could have run straight, courses that taper as they rise, even a chevron pattern laid into the upper courses of the walls. This is deliberate architecture, the work of people who knew exactly what they were doing. So why did anyone ever pretend otherwise? Because of what those stones were worth to the men who came looking for them. When Europeans reached the ruins in the 1800s, Great Zimbabwe was in the path of empire. Cecil Rhodes was carving out a colony to the north, and a magnificent African city complicated a convenient belief that the land belonged to whoever could make the most of it. And so the myths Moak had started were seized on and amplified. The Queen of Sheba, the biblical land of fur, Phoenician sailors, ancient Greeks, anyone, so long as they were not African. And the ruins were not just misread, they were stripped. A company backed by Rhodes's colonial enterprise, literally the Ancient Ruins Company, was licensed to dig through Great Zimbabwe, hunting for gold. They tore through the ruins and hauled away what they could. And they weren't the only ones. Among the greatest treasures prized loose by colonial explorers were the Zimbabwe birds. 8 soapstone carvings perched on tall columns that had stood in the city for centuries. One by one, they were scattered into private hands and foreign museums. Then came the man who did the most lasting damage of all. In 1902, a colonial curator named Richard Nicklin Hall was put in charge of the site and set about cleaning it. What he actually did was dig out and dump the upper layers of soil across the ruins, because in his view they were the debris of a later, lesser African occupation, blocking the real ancient builders underneath. Those layers were the evidence. In clearing them, Hall destroyed some of the clearest stratigraphy the site had, the record that could have precisely dated the people who actually lived there, shoveled away to protect a fantasy. And still, the truth would not stay buried. In 1905, an archaeologist named David Randall Mackay examined what remained and concluded, plainly, that Great Zimbabwe was medieval and African. In 1929, another came to finish the argument. Gertrude Caton-Thompson, who led a careful excavation and found the pottery, the layout, the whole material record pointing one way, to a medieval, Bantu origin. Among those who studied it, the debate was over, but being right and being allowed to say so are not the same thing. By the 1960s, this was white-ruled Rhodesia, and its government could not let a black African civilization stand as the founder of the land it was claiming. So the state reached into the history itself. Official guidebooks were edited to cast doubt on the African origin. Museum staff were pressured, and the government's own senior inspector of monuments, an archaeologist named Peter Garlake, was forced out of the country around 1970 for refusing to teach a lie. This was not the distant past. This was censorship, by law, within living memory. Even now, the ghost of it lingers. Search online and you'll still find people insisting the builders must have been outsiders, lost white races, or visitors from somewhere else. But that idea has a birthday, an author, and a motive. It was never a scholarly puzzle. It was a tool, built to justify taking a country. And every version of it, from the Queen of Sheba to the ancient astronaut, does the same quiet work. It takes a people's greatest achievement and hands it to anyone but them. When the country won its independence in 1980, it took the name of the ruined city for itself, and slowly the looted pieces began to return. One of the Zimbabwe birds had ended up in a museum in Germany, split in two, half a world from where it was carved. In 2003, that fragment was finally sent back. And the bird, broken apart by the looting, was made whole again in the country that made it. Not a city that vanished, a city that was explained away. A real history with real builders, looted, cleared, rewritten, and outlawed. Because the truth was inconvenient to an empire. Great Zimbabwe was never lost. It stood in plain sight, 11 meters of mortarless granite everyone could see, and some people were paid not to understand. The walls were always there, the lie lived in the labels. Those walls still stand today exactly where the Shona raised them, outlasting the looters, the curators, and the government that tried to write them out of their own land. If this is the kind of story that stays with you, subscribe. There are more forgotten places and more buried truths waiting on this channel. Because Great Zimbabwe leaves us with an uneasy question. If a history this large, this solid, and this obvious could be unbuilt for 100 years, how many others never came back at all?